Mark 3, verse 1, and he entered again into the synagogue. And I'd like to preach today, as God shall guide, simply from these two words, back again. Back again. Turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, my dear Christian neighbor, I'm back again. Hope that you'll pray with me this morning. For some 400 years, between the conclusion of the Old Testament and the beginning of the New Testament, there was what's known as a period of silence. It was through this time that no prophetic voice rose to prominence. There was no writing, no letters, no speeches that were written down that entered into the canon. But yet there were 400 years where it seemed as though God was silent. It seemed as though God had spoke great things. He had talked about how his people could come out of captivity, raised up prophet after prophet, judge after judge, leader after leader. But now for some period of time, it feels as though God has been silent. And it's through this period of silence that a religious elite class that we know as Pharisees has risen to prominence. There was a time where persons were trying to figure out, how do we live out the faith? How do we do the things that God has instructed and commanded us to do? And during this period, the Pharisees rise to prominence with not bad intentions, but yet they come to give guidance and direction to believers during this era. They come to bring structure, to bring clarity, so that they don't repeat the mistakes of their past. And it's important, my brothers and my sisters, that there comes a moment in all of our lives where we begin to put structure in place so we do not make the same mistakes over again. Do I have a witness here today? Do I have anybody here today who know there came a point in your life when you said, I got to figure out how to do this thing right. I'm sick and tired of making the same mistakes over and over. I'm tired of falling at the same things time after time. But I need some structure. I need a system so I can make it through this thing called life. These Pharisees come to give a system to put out instructions so that everyone knows how to live out the Levitical laws that have been laid, how to go throughout and live out the commands that have been written down in the Torah that Moses gave them, so they do not return to exile. But they also put structure that blocked God from doing new things. They put structure in place that prevented them from seeing the new move of God when it came. And it was in this context that Jesus enters into the scene. He comes with a new message. He comes with the fulfillment of the law. But the people who are protecting the law have struck it so close that they can't see the living word when it's in their face. And my brothers and my sisters, you ought to guard yourself and make sure you never restrict yourself from seeing the blessing that God has for you. Does anybody here know what I'm talking about? Is there anybody here who knows there have been some seasons in your life where God gave you what you needed, but you were so stuck on doing things your own way that you couldn't receive the blessing when it knocked on your front door? Do I have a witness here today? Jesus enters into this context. He enters into a religious world that is so struck on making sure that everything happens the way they want it to, that they don't realize that they have the Son of God right in their face. And he comes in and he has come with a new assignment. He's come with a new challenge, a new charge that's given him by his Father. And it's to change some stuff around and to help people to see the real way to God is through love and through caring and accepting his Son. But whenever you come to introduce something new, there's going to be some obstacles. And I had to preach this today as we're getting ready to go into the fall season, as groups are launching, as our children and teachers are going back to school. If God has called you to be a change agent, it's going to be difficult. Amen, somebody. If God called you to question the way things are and to introduce an alternative path, you're going to go against some opposition. Because in physics, whenever an object changes course, a force has to be exerted upon it to change it from where it's going to where it needs to go. And Jesus drops into the text at this moment, at this time, as a force to be reckoned with. And my brothers and my sisters, God did not call us just to go along with the status quo, but God called us to be a force to be reckoned with. Is there everybody here today who knows you are a force to be reckoned with? God didn't call you to go into situations and everything stay the same. But God called you to make some folk upset. God called you to ruffle some feathers. God called you to change some stuff. Because he said, I'm placing you here at this time to change some things around, and it's going to start with you. Oh, snap five with your neighbor and say, I'm a force to be reckoned with, baby. When I walk into a meeting, people ought to get upset. When I start working on a project, people start wondering what is going on. Because God called me to change some stuff. And this is what change looks like. Jesus comes into the text, and he is a change agent. But though he is coming with a new message that is really just fulfillment of the law, those who have been in power want to shut him up.
Come on.
Those who have been the guardians of religious authority realize that their position of power is now threatened. And whenever you go up against power, you're going to have to fight. Somebody missed that. No one ever let go of power without a fight. And when people have power, they don't want to hear anything that puts it in jeopardy. That's why sometimes when you raise ideas on your job that make sense, your boss, your supervisor shuts them down immediately. Because they say if you get an inch, you threaten my power. Bring it closer. That's why sometimes in church, not at St. Paul, but in other churches up north, when you're serving in ministry, you raise ideas in a rehearsal, in a meeting, and the leader shuts you down. Not because the idea is not where you should be going, but because they don't want to let go of their power. And Jesus comes in and in the course of 2 chapters disrupts some stuff. He brings a new understanding to what baptism is all about. He goes into the synagogue. He goes into a dead church and starts casting out spirits. Somebody missed that. He goes into a church where you can't buy an amen and start speaking in tongues. Start laying hands on folk and stuff is released. And the guardians of the frozen chosen don't like that. Because they know they can't operate in the capacity that Jesus can. So they start making a campaign to stop him. He goes out in the streets, start running revival, crusades. Everywhere he goes, they start bringing sick folk to him. And he heals them. He gives the folk what they need. Sorry, I missed that. The religious leaders kept them in the right path. So they did everything according to the law, regardless of their needs being met. Jesus comes and meets their needs. So they start realizing, we got to stop this man. They even try to question him on his way to church. Somebody missed that. He's trying to get to the synagogue, and they trying to question him while he's getting his spirit ready for worship. That's why you got to guard the conversations you have on your way to church. That's why you can't respond to every message between the time you wake up and the time you walk into these doors. Because the enemy will use everything to distract you and stop you from doing what God placed you there to do. And the text, we find Jesus now coming back to the synagogue. But I have to admit, my brothers and my sisters, I had some problems with this. Because the first time Jesus comes to the synagogue, there's a man with some spirits. He calls out the spirits. He gives the man the freedom that he needs. Everybody starts questioning, saying who he think he is. That he can just walk in here and start commanding spirits. What kind of power must he have that he can do what we can't do? Because when you can't do something, you wonder how somebody else can. And this is somebody's word of release. Some of the battles you are fighting are not because you are doing something wrong. It's simply because the people around you don't understand why you can do what they cannot. And Jesus, all of that swirling, at the same time he's having great success running tent can go out on the street and ain't nobody wondering why he doing what he doing. But he come into church and they try to stop it. He can go out and rent out the Civic Center, have great worship, but in the church, they don't want what he came to offer. And I have to admit, if I was in Jesus' situation, Pastor, I'm not certain I would have gone back to the church. Why would I go to the place where they're rejecting me? Why would I go to the place where they're talking about me? Why would I go to the place where they look at me funny? Come on. When nobody wants to sit next to me? Where they act as though something ain't right with me and they ain't all that themselves. And Jesus says, I had to come back here because this is part of what God called me to do. He says, I come back to the synagogue because this is the place where I've got to teach and preach. And I have not come to start something new. I've come to finish what's already been started. If I was a better preacher, somebody would throw something at me. Let me say that again. I did not come to start my own thing. I came to bring the second half of the story to what's already been in the works. And the problem many of us find is that we get hit with opposition. But instead of pressing through it, we go off in another direction. Think about it for a second. Jesus was called to bring clarity to everything that the prophets had foretold years earlier. But the place where the message of the prophets was shared was in the synagogue. So if he was coming to fulfill that, he had to go to the synagogue. That's why sometimes when you hear people talk about, well, I don't go to church, but I'm spiritual, it really doesn't make any sense. Y'all know some folk like that? Say, you know, I believe in God, but I don't believe in church. As if he's not the God of the church. Some stuff, you know, just don't make sense. Somebody missed that. Some stuff just doesn't make sense. There's no explanation for it, it don't make sense. But the problem we have is we try to disconnect from some stuff that we don't like because we don't want to have to go through some opposition. But the reality is this. You're going to have to go against opposition. Somebody was looking for something super spiritual right there. I'm sorry. In this life, you will have tribulation. If everything was going to be easy, Jesus wouldn't have had to die. But Jesus is teaching us, he says, no, I had to go back because this is part of what I got to do. He says, I got to help y'all understand. I went back because I'm called for this. God sent me down here to go into these synagogues and change their teaching. Because what they have been teaching has not been all the way right. And I did not come to allow them to keep on teaching the wrong thing, but I had to come to confront it. Because it's time for them to get it right. It's time for them to understand that love is the most important thing when understanding your relationship with God. It ain't about your works. It ain't about following the law to the letter. It's about the love that you have for God, which then translates to the love you have for somebody else. And if that's what I'm called to do, I gotta show them that even though you talk about me, I'm still gonna love on you. Even though you're trying to kill me, I'm still gonna throw my arms around you and hug you. Even though you scandalize in my lane, there is nothing that's gonna separate you from the love I got for you. Is there anybody here who knows there have been some seasons in your life when you had to learn what love was all about? People had rubbed your last nerve. People talked about you. People made rumors up on you. But you said, no, this is the time. I gotta love even though you're not showing it to me. And as I show you love, I see just how much God really loves me. Oh, slap five with your neighbor and say, God loves me, baby. If you only knew the stuff I did and the fact that he still loves me, it somebody else. The calling is also about you. And if you really are called, you're going to have to do things you may not want to do. Ain't going to get too many amens on this one. Because if you are truly called, you're going to have some Gethsemane moments where you say, Lord, take it. I don't want this. But you got to stay long enough to say, not my will, but thine be done. And for me, I learned it in my position at the church. I lead all of our ministries, all our ministry staff. And there was a situation a couple of months ago where I had to confront an issue. It was an issue that had been lingering longer than I was in the position. But I just happened to be the one who had to deal with it. Some stuff just ain't fair. And I didn't want to do it, but God said, no. If this is what you're called to do, this is part of what you got to do. So I had the meeting, and through the meeting, the Holy Spirit guided the words we needed to say so we could get the outcome we needed. But God said this was not about them. This was about you. And in order for you to fully walk in your calling, you got to understand that there's some stuff you're going to have to do even if you don't want to do it. But this is a shout. If you trust God in it, not only will He guide you as you walk the path, but He will bring the outcome that He wants to pass. Is there anybody here who knows there have been some times when you said in your own mind, Lord, I'm trusting you enough. I know you called me to do this, so I'm just walking by faith. I don't know how things are going to work out, but I'm believing you did not bring me this far to leave me now, and I'm going to do what you called me to do, and step by step, God worked things out so the very thing that needed to happen, happened, and you can look back and say, thank you, Lord, for working through me. Thank you, Lord, for raising me up, for propping me up, for making me strong when I know I was weak to do what you called me to do. I need to talk to some folks who know you got a calling on your life, and there have been some times you did not want to do stuff, but you just said, no, Lord, I'm trusting and believing that you called me to do this, and I'm going to believe and watch for you to make it happen. She said, I went because I was called to this. I ain't worried about no Pharisees. I can help somebody. Jesus was called to save the world. It's through Him that we are here today. He came to provide a way for us to return in right relationship to the Father. Because of sin, we could not access God. I need some Bible believers with me today. And it was through the reconciliation given us by the blood of Jesus Christ that we can now stand before God and look without sin or fault. What would that have looked like? Let some Pharisees stop Him from doing it. Somebody didn't make the connection. What would Jesus have looked like if we said, well, I can't give salvation because I don't want to deal with some Pharisees? And this is for somebody here today. Stop worrying about what you're facing right now. Because when you get past it, it will pale in comparison to what God really calls you to do. Oh, turn to your neighbor and say, stop tripping up over this little stuff. Stop worrying about people talking about you. Stop worrying about people saying things behind your back. God said, I called you to do great things. I did not call you to fall right now. I called you to do greater things than these. Jesus said, I was called to this. That's why I went back. Because there was a great assignment on my life. But secondly, he says, I went back because there was a need to fill. Somebody say, fill the need. Fill the need. Jesus goes into the synagogue, and on this day, there's a man with a shriveled hand. And the text records the man with the shriveled hand as being a pawn. The Pharisees may have even planted him on this day to see what Jesus would do. They are not concerned with the man. They're just concerned with what Jesus is going to do. But Jesus sees a man with a shriveled hand. Because of his shriveled hand, most likely he was not able to work. A man in this day who could not work was not respected in society. Some stuff changes. It's another sermon for another week. So Jesus sees a man who is not able to enter into his right place. The Pharisees see a pond that they're going to use to trap Jesus. But Jesus says, I came to fill needs. And if I don't go to the synagogue, this man won't get the need filled. So I'm going not just because of the message I got to share, but I'm going because there's something I need to do. And so many of us sell short what God has placed in us that can bless somebody else. We don't like to talk about our faith because we know a couple of people in our family or on our job don't believe the same thing we do. We don't like to post it on social media because we know some of our friends are out there. The 20-year-olds know what I'm talking about. But what we miss is that God is trying to use us to bless somebody else. And we can't bless somebody else if we keep it all to ourselves. But what I've learned, my brothers and my sisters, is that in some of the very moments when you don't want to share what God has done for you, is the very time that God is trying to use you to bless somebody else. Because in Revelation we hear, we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. So it's when we share what God has done in us, God uses that to bless somebody else. And how many of you know that if it had not been for somebody else walking in their calling, you would not be where you are today? I need to talk to some folks who know if it had not been for that grandmother always talking about Jesus, even when you didn't want to hear it, you wouldn't have known how to call on him on the midnight hour. I want to talk to some folks who know if it had not been for a pastor, for a preacher, walking in that calling, even when you did not hear what to hear, what they had to say, you would have fallen apart a long time ago. But Jesus used what they had to bless you. But it's interesting because not only does he feel the need for the guy, it also shows what filling needs look like. But filling a need does not happen in a vacuum. You cannot only fill a need when everything's perfect. But even when there's opposition, you still gotta fill a need. And I found that many of us could even take it a step further and know that Jesus has modeled this in our own lives. Because we have at times been the opposition. We built the barrier to block him from blessing us. And even though we didn't want it, he still gave it to us. Oh, that was somebody's word. You should have shouted on that. Let me bring it back and fix it one more time. If you really think about where you are, and you look at the blessings he gave you even when you weren't looking for them, even when you tried your hardest to build up a structure to block him from moving in your life, and in spite of it, he still came back to you and gave you exactly what you needed. Or is there anybody here today who knows that you were not asking God to do it? In fact, you were trying your hardest to sin as big and bad as you could, but all praise be to God that in spite of your obstacles, he still showed up to you and gave you the peace that surpassed all understanding. He still came to you and let you see that no weapon formed against you is going to be able to prosper. He still let you see that I am your shepherd and you shall not want. Jesus says you got to feel the need even in opposition. But third and finally, he says not only must you go back because you're called to this, Not only do you go back to fill the need, but third and finally, you have to go back to send a signal to the enemy that they can't stop you. I dare you slap by with your neighbor and say, the devil can't stop me now. This is the infancy of Jesus' ministry. This is early on. He has just, initiated his call to preach, just preached his initial sermon a couple of weeks earlier. And the enemy is trying his hardest to stop him now. Devil pulling out all the stops, trying to start spreading some rumors, making the religious guardians be against him. He don't even get a couple of weeks where they're happy to see him. He start off with them trying to stop him. Because sometimes the enemy knows what you can be before you do. Sometimes the devil sees the end before the beginning. And he tries to stop you then. Because he knows if you can only become who God called you to be, you're going to make a great dent in his kingdom. So the enemy throws everything, and Jesus says, I got to go back. Because if I don't, the devil will think he got me. The devil will really think that these little attacks are going to be successful in dictating the direction of my ministry. Because the reality is, the enemy is not always trying to stop you on your tracks. Sometimes the enemy just wants to see if you will follow him on a detour. Just imagine if Jesus said, all right, I ain't going to go back to the synagogue because the Pharisees don't like me. Then the devil would have known he can dictate Jesus' actions. But Jesus says, no, devil, I got to let you see right now that though you trying as hard as you can, it ain't going to work. Oh, somebody missed that. Though you pulling out all the stops early on, none of what you're going to do will be successful. So I'm going to go back, because when I go back, then it's going to cause you to realize I'm more than what you think I am. There's somebody here today who's facing some great opposition. You've been wondering why you got to go through the things you're going through. Well, God sent me here today to let you see, even if you don't see it yet, that he's got some great things in store for you. And the enemy's coming at you hard right now to try to stop you from being who he called you to be. But I came by Richmond today to let you know that the devil is a liar. And there's nothing that the devil can do to stop what God has in store for your life. Or I dare you to slap by with the person next to you and say, the devil can't stop me. The devil should have tried before I got to church this morning. Because now I see that God's got a greater thing in store for me. And I know that if I keep my hand in his hand, then I'm going to be all right every step of the way. Is there anybody in St. Paul today who has a testimony that there have been some times you had to go against major opposition? There have been some seasons when it felt like all hell was breaking out in your life, but that was just an indication that God was getting ready to do something great in your life, and the devil tried to stop you. He tried to trip you up. He tried to throw everything but the kitchen sink your way, but you stand today having seen God fight every battle for you. You stand here today having a new testimony that you've seen the devil slayed right in your face, and now you know, now you really know that God's going to do great things in your life. Slap five with somebody and say, I'm destined for great things. I'm destined for great things. I will not let the devil stop what God's going to do in my life. But he who has begun a good work in me shall perform it until the day of the Lord Jesus. And I know that all things work together for the good of them that love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. So devil, throw your best shot. Devil, bring all you got. But I know that you shall be defeated. Because get what, church? I've seen that I'm at my best when I'm up against the worst odds. I'm at my best when I'm walking through hell. I'm at my best when opposition has turned up the heat. Because when it gets hot, that's when God gets good. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I got an example of what it looks like when stuff gets hot. Come in, Jesus. Jesus said it got hot up on a hill called Calvary. They put nails in my hand and nails in my feet. A crown of thorns was smashed in my head. They poked me in my side up there and I died. They thought I was out. The devil started rejoicing. Demons started shouting. Imps started celebrating. They thought they were successful in ending my story, but they didn't know that I was made to die. And in death, that's when things started getting good. Because guess what? I went down to hell. I took back the keys of destruction. I took back the keys over death. But I wasn't done. And then excuse me, my Baptist roots are starting to bubble out. I gotta say it again. Early on Sunday morning, I got up with all power, and I got up letting the enemy know that you are defeated. There's nothing you can do to stop the work that I'm gonna do. And is there anybody in church today who's seen God defeat some devils in your life? You've seen some enemies have to tuck their tail and run away because God fought some fights for you. If that's you, I dare you to give God some praise for what He's done. I dare you to open up your mouth and start celebrating in magnitude to the defeats that's happening. Start rejoicing that match up to the greatness of the things that God has done for you. And if you come today up against a major fight, God sent me here to let you know, just keep on going, just keep on trusting, just keep on believing, hang in there a little while longer, and God will bring you through. If you know that God will bring you through, say yes, say yes, say yes, say yes, say yes.